Jameson.
Number 2, Madam Speaker.
And this is another open question, as indeed are all the listed questions today.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Jameson.
Isn't the Deputy Prime Minister's real objection to the idea of a mayor for London as he only loves new titles when he can have them?
Mr. Heseltine, of course, was the President of the Board of Trade and now the Deputy Prime Minister.
I think having moved from being President to Deputy Prime Minister, it may not seem to be an advance now to become a mayor. But if on the other hand, by the united view of the House, I was to be offered the job, I'd have to seriously consider it.
Mr. John Butcher.
Does my right honourable friend have a sneaking respect for those good, honest socialists who are stinking rich, but who are prepared to argue that the rich should pay higher taxes? And would he therefore like to remind these people, people like Ben Elton, Maureen Lipman, Ken Follett, Melvin Bragg, people like that, that there's nothing stopping them now from voluntarily contributing more taxes? And if that is the case, if we're going to have the Ladywood line, anyone who is tempted to vote Labour, who is currently earning an MP's salary or more of £34,000 or more, could start paying extra taxes now if they want, because there may not be a Labour government in the future to force them to do so.
Well, I think my honourable friend raises the most important point, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who the House will notice is in his place, mentioned to me that anyone who wants to get in touch with him and make a gesture pro bono publico will be very warmly received. But the PSBR is coming down anyway, so there's no immediate need to make any sort of request of that sort. But the real issue, the serious issue for this House, is not whether there should be higher or lower levels of public expenditure or tax. It's whether an opposition party can systematically refuse to answer any of the questions as to whether they intend to raise taxes and for whom. And then to see an opposition spokesman literally clawed off the airwaves on a day when she should have been dealing with her major responsibility of the privatisation of British Rail, because the party opposite was terrified she would not tell the truth, but she would repeat the truth.
That's Claire Short, of course.
Number 3, Madam.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Simon.
Madam Speaker, going on the subject of tax, if the figures we heard this morning showed an outturn for the year just gone of 32 billion against a projection of 21 billion, does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with the Chancellor, who on the World at One today said that if the figures for the year we've just started before the next budget show that they are still at 30 billion or above, the real PSBR, then that there will be no scope for tax cuts? Does he accept that that will mean that the history of this administration is that there have not been tax cuts under the Tories, there are not now tax cuts under the Tories, and if there is prudent following of all independent fiscal advice, there cannot, before the next election, be tax cuts under the Tories either?
Well, as I understand Liberal policy, he should be supporting the government and the lobbies, because the Liberal Party is constantly trying to put up tax bills. But the fact of the matter is, that the Chancellor will make judgments about a proper balance between public provision and tax reductions. But what everybody knows, and what the Chancellor's last budget made clear, is that when it can be prudently done, a Conservative government will reduce taxes. That is why there has been a significant improvement in people's real disposable income in the course of the last few weeks, as they see taxes coming down under this Conservative government.
Sir Michael Newburn.
Number 4, Madam.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply I gave some moments ago.
Sir Michael Newburn.
Does my right honourable friend bank at Barclays? Isn't it an awful waste of the bank's money to have sent the member for Hartlepool all the way to Hong Kong with UK shares?
Order. Must remind the honourable gentleman that he has to question the Deputy Prime Minister, for which he has a responsibility as a government minister.
The member for Hartlepool is Peter Mandelson.
With UK share prices hitting record highs, with unemployment coming down yet again this month by 27,500, and with price rises at their lowest levels for a generation, wouldn't the honourable member for Hartlepool do more to his own advantage to stay close to home?
I am extremely grateful to my honourable friend for raising this subject because it is quite apparent from the article in the Times today that the honourable member for Hartlepool had a task which could be interpreted as being in support of government policy. And I quote, because what he said is, we must step up our efforts to promote the town of Hartlepool, and I'm pleased to announce that during Easter I'm travelling to Japan, Korea, Hong Kong and Singapore to beat the drum for investment in Hartlepool. Now that is government policy. The problem is, of course, that it was paid for by Barclays Bank. And Barclays Bank have a different view. The trip had nothing to do with Hartlepool. The only connection we have with Hartlepool is a branch in the High Street.
George Galloway.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, has the Deputy Prime Minister had time to see the devastating pictures of the shattered UN peacekeepers base in the south of Lebanon, where in the last few hours more than 50 Fijian soldiers, Lebanese and Palestinian refugees, men, women and children, have been slaughtered by the Israeli invasion force? Did he know that this morning, some hours earlier, a mother, her 4-day-old child and her 6 other children were killed by an Israeli air raid on her home in South Lebanon? Does he agree with me that the flames now burning in Lebanon run the risk of burning to ash all of the hopes of the peace process in the Middle East? And will the British government support an emergency meeting of the Security Council to try to bring this cycle of devastating violence to an end?
I'm grateful to the honourable member for raising what is an appalling human tragedy, and it indicates to all of us in this House just how fragile peace processes are and how innocent the victims can often be. I personally have seen Fijian soldiers serving in the interests of the United Nations. They are an immensely impressive force, and they do a wholly desirable task on behalf of the wider world. But looking at the issues involved in South Lebanon and in the attacks that Hezbollah have been making on Israel from there, it is quite apparent that one is facing a near intractable problem of the deepest concern to the international community. This government will do all that it possibly can to play any part in accelerating the processes of peace and the restoration of a ceasefire. That, I understand it, is the Israeli position, and we certainly strongly support that position. I'm sure the whole House would extend its sympathies to the relatives of those of the Fijian force who were so unfortunately killed in today's incident.
Thank you. Time's up.
Well, George Galloway there bringing a sombre close to an otherwise politically rather theatrical session of